If you're looking for a budget-friendly beginner drone, then this Potensic Atom might be just what you're looking for. But at the same price point as the DJI Mini SE2, my question is why you would opt for this drone over the more popular DJI option. So today I'm gonna go through the design and build quality of this drone, the ease of use, the flight performance and image quality, and then I'll finish with some pros and cons and my final thoughts. And just so you know, Potensic sent me the drone for free, but I'm not being paid and all the thoughts in this video are my own. So starting off with the design and build quality, overall I've been really impressed with the Potensic Atom. I think it is quite comparable to other big brands like DJI, and I think it's about what you'd expect at this price point. The drone itself feels quite solid and like it would survive a small drop, and it's overall made with relatively high quality plastic. It's also sub 250 grams, so you can get away with not having to register this in a lot of places around the world. I think my only real complaint about the build quality of the drone itself is the battery compartment. I just noticed that when you push it in, it doesn't feel quite as secure as I feel like it should. And I've noticed a couple of times just before I've taken off, it's given me a warning on the phone screen saying just make sure that the battery compartment is secure, which doesn't inspire a lot of confidence, but I haven't had any issues with it falling out or anything. And I always make sure it's properly clipped in before I actually fly, but just a little more confidence in knowing that it was fully secured would be nice. Now, when it comes to the controller, I was actually quite a big fan of the design of this one. It actually feels very nice to hold, and I like how it's super easy and quick to set up. Again, it feels quite high quality for the price. I think the only thing that was a little bit concerning was just the antennas. When they're unfolded, they just look a little bit flimsy, and I would hate to accidentally bump them and snap them off somehow. But as long as you're careful, I don't think you have any problems. And then I also actually quite like how you can store the little controller thumbsticks in the actual controller. I think it's a nifty little design, and also means it folds down more compactly and fits into the carry case, which is quite nice. Now, speaking of the carry case, if you get the Fly More combo, which is what I've got, you do get the carry case. And I was actually really impressed again with the carry case. It's very high quality. It's got 4 main compartments plus a zipper pocket at the top, and everything fits really nicely and snugly. I even like the little Velcro loop that you can tie around the drone to make sure that the propellers don't flap around too much. And then lastly, again, if you get the Fly More combo, you get the extra battery charger with the 2 extra batteries. And once again, this seemed like really solid build quality. It feels very sturdy. It plugs in easily to the wall with a power adapter, and it seems to charge all the batteries simultaneously, so you don't have to wait for one at a time, which is a nice touch. Plus, you can even output USB power if you need to charge other devices when you're on the go, which is a nice touch. Next, let's talk a bit about the ease of use of this drone. And when I first got it, the setup was super easy, very straightforward. It was just a matter of downloading the app, charging up the drone, and then taking it out and going for my first flight. Takeoff is really straightforward, especially if you've used drones before. It'll be very intuitive. It's basically the same controls. And even if you haven't flown a drone before, I think you'll also find it quite intuitive to use. I had some friends who gave it a go who'd never flown a drone before, and they had no problems whatsoever. Again, when you're actually flying, the controller feels really nice to use, and the fact that you can use it with any phone that you've got with the included cables makes it super versatile. And I definitely felt like the controls were very responsive, and it was easy to navigate and fly the drone around exactly where I wanted it. And then again, the actual Potensic app itself was very clear and straightforward. Again, if you've used drones before, this will be nothing new to you. It all feels very familiar and straightforward. I think one of my favorite features on the app during flight is the little pop-out map. So if I've flown it a bit too far and I can't quite see where it is, I can just open the map up and I can see exactly where it is in relation to me and then fly it back really easily. So speaking of flying, what's the actual flight performance like? Well, once again, I found it to be overall really solid. There's 3 different modes, and in each mode, it felt really easy to use. The sport mode is actually really quite fast. I was able to fly a fair amount of distance in a short amount of time, which was quite nice. And I was able to maintain a really strong connection to the controller, which obviously is really important. I wasn't able to max out the specified range in my city, but again, that's to be expected. In urban environments, you probably won't get as much distance just because there's so much interference going on. However, when I was outside of the city in a rural area, I got a lot more range. Plus, I've noticed on other drones that I've used, when you're recording, for some reason that seems to interfere with the transmission a bit, whereas on the Potensic, I didn't notice that at all. The battery life was really good. I got around 20 to 25 minutes, depending on what mode I was in, which is a little bit shorter than the specified time, but again, that's to be expected. And I was bringing it back home at about 20% battery, maybe 15% battery, just to make sure that I had time to land it properly. So when you've got the 3 batteries in the Fly More combo, you'll easily get a solid hour and a half of flying time out of this drone. Also found in higher wind conditions, it actually performed quite well. I wasn't sure how it was going to go, but I took it up on a day when it was relatively windy, and it was able to stay stable quite well. This included both the actual drone just hovering in the air, as well as the footage footage that I was capturing from the camera. I'm also a big fan of the quick shots mode. This just makes it really easy to get some simple drone shots that can actually look really cool. It's just a matter of lining up the drone to the position you want it to start in, hitting the quick shot button, and then letting the drone do its thing. I found that the quick shots were really smooth and really reliable, and I definitely plan on using them more in the future. And then the last thing I wanted to touch on when it comes to the flight performance is the tracking mode. And I would say this is one of the main selling points of the Potensic Atom, because typically when it comes to tracking modes, you have to spend quite a bit more money than this drone is priced at in order to get active track. However, this is a fully included feature with the Atom, and I found it to be, again, really reliable. It did a great job of tracking me, and I can definitely see this coming in handy for someone like me who likes to skateboard a lot, or even if you're just wanting to do tracking shots with vehicles or stuff like that. Next, let's talk about the camera and image quality of the Potensic Atom. And once again, I would say overall it was decent. It wasn't as good, I think, as it could be. I think there were just a couple of main things that made it lose points in terms of image quality for me. The first was that the dynamic range isn't amazing. And to be fair, you can't expect cinema level footage from a drone at this price point. But I did notice when I was shooting more towards sunset that the ground would get quite dark because the drone was trying to expose for the sky. And then I think the other thing was just that I noticed objects in the distance seemed to be a little bit more blurry than objects that were a bit closer to the drone. I'm not exactly sure why this is, and it's not super noticeable when the video isn't too enlarged, but when you're blowing it up quite big on a full screen, it does become a bit more obvious. Plus, again, the low light performance isn't amazing, which is somewhat to be expected, again, for a drone at this price point. I found in cloudy conditions, it didn't perform quite as well as in brightly lit sunlight conditions, and there was a bit of noticeable grain. But to be honest, I don't think a lot of that stuff would be that noticeable, especially if you're using this mainly for stuff like social media, which is probably what most people would be buying a drone like this for. But I really like the fact that it's a full 4K, it's not just 2.7K, which means I think overall you get a sharper image. It's a bit more versatile because you can crop it a little bit more. And overall, even though it's not the best image quality you'll ever see, I don't think you'll be disappointed. I was actually really happy and it's very usable. I plan on using this drone more in the future for more of my YouTube content, for example. So let's talk about some of the pros and cons. I think the main pros are the fact that it's really easy to use, which is perfect if you're someone who's just getting started in the world of drones and you're just wanting to learn the ropes. It's also got really decent build quality. Again, considering the price, I'm very impressed, and it definitely competes with some of the bigger brands. The Fly More combo is great. I highly recommend picking this up, especially because you get that awesome carry case. The 4K video is really nice. Again, comparing it to the DJI Mini SE2, that's only 2.7K. So it's actually really nice to be able to get the full 4K for essentially the same price. And then finally, I think the biggest pro is the tracking mode. If you're looking for a drone that does active track, then I think you'd be hard pressed to get a better deal than this drone. Like I said, you often have to spend a decent amount more to get active track on a drone of this size. In terms of the cons, I think the main thing is really just the image quality. It's not as amazing as it could be, but again, it's not a huge con, and depending on your use case, it probably won't be any issue. And the other thing is basically the fact that it's the same price as the DJI Mini SE2. So the big question I've been asking is, why would you buy this drone over the more popular DJI option? And I think it really comes down to a couple of things. The first is the tracking mode. If you want tracking, the DJI Mini SE2 does not have that. It has quick shots, but it doesn't have active track, and you have to spend more in the DJI drone family in order to be able to get that tracking. And the other thing is the 4K. So if you're wanting 4K instead of that 2.7, then I think this drone might be the one to buy. And to be honest, I'm just really happy to see that DJI actually has some proper competitors. I think there's been a lot of drone manufacturers that have come and gone who tried to compete with DJI and they just haven't been able to produce a product that's comparable. But I think this is actually a drone that I would recommend potentially over the DJI, depending on what your use case is. If you want to find out more about the Potensic, then check out the link in the description. But if you want to see how it compares to a slightly older DJI drone, then check out this video here where I talk about whether or not the DJI Mini SE is still worth it.